Barley. It's an essential ingredient in most beer brewing. Malted barley often provides the flavor, color, and body for a beer. The natural sugars from barley are also essential to the fermentation process. Barley is to beer what grapes are to wine. So yeah, it's that important. You know what's also important? Keeping bugs from destroying barley crops.
Barley is an important industry in our country. It brings in, I think, over $1 billion in crop value. And as far as exports, we export $280 million worth of barley and barley products and $544 million for beer and $1.3 billion for whiskey. So it's an important part of our economy. And yeah, we need to keep barley around.
Back in the mid-'80s, a pest called the Russian Wheat Aphid first arrived in the United States. Almost immediately, this invasive pest began munching on wheat, barley, and other crops. It's enough to make you cry in your beer. To make matters worse, this pale green bug, with a long flat back and 6 legs, releases toxins in the plants, causing further damage. The Russian wheat aphid has caused hundreds of millions in crop damage and devastated barley farming regions in Colorado, Nebraska, and elsewhere in the U.S. The aftermath is still felt in these regions today.
As a matter of fact, Colorado ended up not growing barley anymore because it was so bad there. And of course, there were a lot of fears where it might spread. And the malting barley people in the north were worried about that coming their direction too. So my program basically started trying to find resistance for the Russian wheat aphid, which we didn't have any, and then to breed that into germplasm lines and or varieties that could be grown.
That's Dr. Dolores Mornhinweg, research geneticist at the Peanut and Small Grains Research Unit in Stillwater, Oklahoma. For nearly 30 years, Mornhinweg has been developing new crop lines that are resistant to pests such as the Russian wheat aphid. Developing new lines for pest resistance doesn't happen overnight.
Unfortunately, it takes time. We had to find resistance, then we had to breed it into barley that was adapted to Colorado. Actually did end up releasing 2 varieties, one for eastern Colorado and western Nebraska. Nebraska was in that same situation, but it took so long. They already found another crop that they liked. So barley's coming back slowly, but actually in that area, barley was mainly being grown as cover crop for drought to keep the soil from blowing away. And they basically just wanted to have enough barley back every year to be able to keep their land from disappearing. There is still barley being grown in Colorado, just not as much as there was in the beginning. And Russian wheat aphid is not as serious of a problem now as it was about 10 or 15 years ago, but it's still there and it's still around, and we have since bred resistance. So they have varieties that can grow now that are resistant.
The damage caused by the Russian wheat aphid was not only felt by farmers, but brewers, whiskey distillers, the livestock feed industry, and of course us consumers who like a little barley in our diets. Like many of its cereal crop cousins, barley is a very diverse crop. So developing new lines of barley that's resistant to different pests is a big deal across many different markets.
I released now 70 germplasm lines with Russian wheat aphid resistance, and I put them in all the backgrounds of all the preferred malting varieties. But those were all springs, and those are produced mostly in the northern states and western states. So I have worked with them, but mostly to give them the germplasm to use. They're very picky about what they use in their breeding programs, and they all have their favorites. And I had asked them to send me their favorites. I put resistance in there for Russian wheat aphid and just gave it back to them.
Recently, Mornhinweg had a breakthrough barley line called USDA-ARS. For the first time, this variety of barley was not only resistant to the Russian wheat aphid, but showed good resistance to greenbug and hedgehog grain aphid as well.
I think it has many advantages, but actually the main advantage is it's resistant to 3 different aphids, which is the only multiple aphid-resistant barley maybe in the world.
Mornhinweg used a barley variety that was developed back in the early 80s as the basis for USDA-ARS. This earlier line, called Post 90, was highly resistant to greenbugs.
Greenbug was a big problem. It doesn't occur as often now, but when it does, it's bad. And the growers have to spray, sometimes multiple times. And so, of course, we don't want that. We're definitely trying to get away from having any type of chemical dependency for resistance. I took that and I crossed it with one of my Russian wheat aphid sources. And as it turns out, we have had another new aphid show up in the country called the hedgehog grain aphid. And so far, it hasn't really caused any production loss. We're not sure whether it will develop into that or not.
The hedgehog grain aphid is a cereal pest found in many regions of the world. It was first documented in the U.S. in 2007 and has since shown up sporadically in fields. Mornhinweg surveys fields twice a year as they try to follow how they're adapting to crops, fields, and different climate conditions. As it turns out, they found a lot of similarities between the hedgehog grain and the Russian wheat aphid.
It's pretty much going in the same area as Russian wheat aphid. And in other countries, it's caused a lot of yield loss. We went ahead and cross-referenced, screened all of the known barley resistance genes for Russian wheat aphid, green bug, and only post-90, the recurrent parent of Fortress and Fortress had resistance to that. So we're talking 3 aphid resistances in one line. Besides that, of course, it's great yielding. We have put it over all the different conditions in Oklahoma, and it was on the top of the list every time. So it's beat out any of the other barleys that are being grown in Oklahoma.
USDA Fortress was released in 2020, and interest for the barley line has been picking up. Mornhinweg said Oklahoma producers have asked for an alternative to wheat because the price of wheat can fluctuate. Barley can also be grazed like wheat, which is important in the southern plains to have that dual-purpose crop that can be used for animal feed.
I'm excited about that, and I do have people asking me for it. And the other thing I want to stress is the resistance is tolerance. So the aphids are still on the plant, but it doesn't affect the yield. And that is like a win-win, actually. You're not affecting the food chain. You're not disrupting anything in nature. And yet you're able to produce a very decent crop with good quality without having to spray. Farmers don't have to use chemicals. So it's an economic move for them as well as for the environment.